How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be very happy to have you. Thanks for tuning in. I need to dive into this report. It has made national headlines. Even CNBC was talking about it this morning, and it's not really a business story, except it is. And I want my starting point here be the New York Times for the story. Let me read you this from Dana Goldstein at the New York Times. The reading skills of American high school seniors are the worst they have been in 3 decades, according to new federal testing data, a worrying sign for teenagers as they face an uncertain job market and information landscape challenged by AI. In math, 12th graders had the lowest performance since 2005. The results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, long regarded as the nation's most reliable gold standard exam, showed that about a third of the 12th graders who were tested last year did not have basic reading skills. It was a sign that, among other skills, they may not be able to determine the purpose of a political speech. In math, nearly half of the test takers scored below the basic level, meaning they may not have mastered skills like using percentages to solve real-world problems. The test scores are the first of their kind to be released since the COVID-19 pandemic upended education. They are yet another sign that adolescents are struggling in the wake of the virus when schools were closed for months or more. They also arrive at a time when Americans overall are abandoning printed text for screen time and video-dominated social media, which experts have linked to declining academics. The NAEP test results indicate a stark decline in performance. Only about a third of 12th graders are leaving high school with the reading and math skills necessary for college-level work. The findings echo grim statistics on the recent achievement of younger children. For about 10 years, declines have been most pronounced among low-performing students, indicating that the floor of academic achievement has fallen. NAEP scores among top 12th graders, those at the 90th percentile or above, have not changed significantly over the decades these exams have been given in either reading or math. Test score drops were probably caused in part by the disruptions of the pandemic, including illness, school closures, and remote learnings. The seniors included in the new federal data were in 8th grade when the virus transformed their lives. Even so, data from previous testing shows that learning declines, especially among struggling students, began years before the pandemic. I'm going to talk about myself here personally first. I mentioned my buddy Leland Vittert. He's got his new book out, and he sent me a copy of it, and now I'm trying to remember the title, and the name has gone. Born Lucky, that's it. A dedicated father, grateful son, and my journey with autism. Leland, by the way, he's a good guy. And it's a good book. I've been enjoying it, but man, I'm struggling to read. I read so much show prep material, I struggle to just sit down and read a book anymore. And on top of that, there's so many distractions these days. The Instagram reels, the Twitter feed, the Facebook feed, the text messages. It's a struggle. I get it. I'll condemn myself on this. I will say it's myself. But also I see it with my kids and their friends, the level of distraction from the internet and having phones and stuff like that. But you know what? I've mentioned before, both of my kids went to and my son is still there, a classical Christian school where they are forced to engage, they are forced to read, and they got to do real math, not Common Core math. And the kids who go to private classical education, Christian or not, classical education, Socratic method, lots of memorization in elementary school, analysis in high school, learning to do a thesis, having to stand up in class, answer questions, make arguments, things like that. They're outperforming everybody else. And you know who's really outperforming everybody else in America? Oh, they don't like to talk about it in the data. The homeschool kids. That's right. You see, when the local homeschool cooperative teaches kids, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, because there are some snotty people out there, and I'm not talking about y'all, I'm talking about the progressives who they despise the idea of homeschool. They're like, well, how are you going to teach your child chemistry when you don't know chemistry? Well, because you have something called a homeschool cooperative, and so the parent who does understand chemistry can teach the chemistry classes, the balancing the equations, and things like that. The parent who's good at math can teach the calculus, those sorts of things. You know, that's how homeschool actually works. It's not just the one parent teaching everything, because parents recognize there are some things they're not good at. During COVID, my wife realized that she could not be a homeschool teacher because if she did, our son would be murdered or she would be murdered by our son. So we stayed with the good small school that our kids go to. Some parents can homeschool, some can't. And some parents have to send their kids to public schools. And the kids who are at the top in the public schools are the kids who, more often than not, their parents are the most engaged in the school. We go to church with a couple. They sent their kids to public school. They wanted their kids in public school. They wanted to support the public school system. They thought it would be missional for their kids. Their kids, given the family's wealth, needed to be around kids not nearly as wealthy as their family, and their kids were in the top academic setting. The mom was at the school all the time, engaged, and those kids are doing quite well. The people whose parents are fully engaged and the kids get into the upper echelon academic program to the public schools, they're still doing well. And you know, in places like New York, you got Mamdani coming in. He wants to shut those things down. He finds them anti-egalitarian. He wants to shut down the magnet schools and the advanced school programs for the gifted kids. Because the left believes in equal outcomes, not equal beginnings, unlike the right. We believe in equal beginnings and unequal outcomes, because that's the way the world actually works. But our school system is failing the kids. And you know, only now are reporters willing to say that, yeah, it's probably a bad idea to have shut down the school system. Probably a bad idea to have shut it all down. You think? Of course it was a bad idea to have shut it all down. And you know what the data shows, and this is something that's not coming up in the reporting right now, and they'll get there eventually, they'll catch up. The Republican states that didn't shut down as long, their kids are outperforming the Democratic states that kept shut down for a very long time. Yeah. Do you know what states are performing the best in literacy, in reading? Those of you who are really progressive, you may need to sit down for this. Mississippi. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama and Tennessee. They're leading the nation in literacy. Yes, those red states, those Republican states, they've actually innovated in education. The blue states have gotten so involved with the teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions are the big impediment. The teachers' unions are the ones that are blocking the innovation. It was the teachers' unions that demanded that all the schools shut down and then lied about it. So we never wanted the schools shut down. That was Donald Trump. No, it wasn't Trump. It was the teachers' unions. Remember that they said they didn't want the teachers. They didn't want the schools to be reopened until they address social justice after George Floyd. We're going to keep them all shut down until we get social justice. They were hijacking the future of our kids. And guess what? Our kids' futures have been hijacked. The kids are dumber now, and the kids are dumber now because the teachers' unions shut down the schools, wouldn't let the schools be open, punished the parents. Remember in Northern Virginia, they were actually targeting parents who were hiring tutors for their kids. In the name of social justice in Northern Virginia, you got letters sent home if they heard that you were hiring tutors for your kids during COVID and coming in during lockdown to teach the kids. Your kids were getting an unfair disadvantage, or unfair advantage, rather. Everyone else was disadvantaged. Your kids should be too. Remember, in Northern Virginia, there was no, I'm not making this up. You can go find the stories in the Washington Post and elsewhere. There were parents who were wealthy who hired tutors and invited their kids' friends, even those not of as wealthy means, to come in and get tutored together. They'd all do these group tutoring sessions. And what did the local ninnies do? They went and said, they're violating lockdown. Look at all these people that's home. We got to shut this down. They didn't want the kids to be educated. Teachers' unions are not about educating kids anyway. They're about comforts for the teachers, about luxuries for the teachers. And the kids fall further behind, except is it not wild? Mississippi. Y'all, listen, I'm from the top to the bottom of Mississippi, I'm on in that state now. Super Talk FM, thank you very much for having me on all your stations. My sister lives in Mississippi. My niece and nephew live in Mississippi. My parents, my nieces, they all went to Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi. My parents met at Mississippi College. Mississippi is not the state that I would expect to lead the nation in literacy. But it is. And it is because that state, not beholden to teachers' unions, decided to figure out what worked best for the students to learn to read. And they used a very, very data-driven approach, a very, very data-driven approach to decide what worked best. And in so doing, they decided that they were going to focus on real academic results. And so Mississippi's outperforming everybody in reading because they didn't care. They didn't care about upsetting the teachers. They cared about making things work for the kids, as they should have done. And too often, the teachers' unions, they decided that they needed to put the comfort of the teachers ahead of the education of the kids. And it's unfortunate. And we have the results. And we know that in the states where the teachers' unions ran supreme, the kids fell further behind than anywhere else. And it's just such a damning indictment that our kids were held hostage, and they don't even have the wherewithal now to apologize. That they can't bring themselves to say sorry. They can't bring themselves to acknowledge that they screwed up. And yet they did. They held our kids hostage. They attacked parents for wanting to advance our kids. They attacked the tutors who were willing to involve themselves. They tried to destroy homeschooling communities. And the only thing that is going to be our saving grace academically in this country moving forward are the parents who decided to put their kids' education ahead of support of public schools. At this point, we should just shut down all the public schools and give the parents the money to go find a school for their kids to go to, because they'll get better results than they're getting in the public schools thanks to the teachers' unions. Can we talk about quality for just a minute? Because I can tell you, as I'm updating some furniture in my house that's lasted a very long time, it pains me to see all the cheapy disposable furniture where you're buying cheap stuff that you replace more often. You're actually losing money. It's like people who go out and they buy very cheap sheets, but at the same time, there are people who think they've got to throw thousands of dollars at bed sheets. I actually know someone who spent $1,500 on sheets. My Bull and Branch sheets, they've lasted longer than that guy's sheets, and they're super soft now. They're not the highest thread count, no, but they're organic cotton, and they're long-lasting, and they get softer over time. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep makes with Bull and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bullandbranch.com/Eric. That's Bull and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Eric, ERICK. Save 15%, unlock free shipping, exclusions apply. All right, I got my AirPod Pro 3 and my Apple Watch Ultra 3 ordered during commercial break. Pre-orders available now. I have my original Apple Watch Ultra. I love my Apple Watch, actually. My son decided I've got a very nice tag watch, and he's like, Dad, I don't want a digital watch. I want an analog watch. And he's like, can I have your old watch? It's like, sure. I mean, you'd get it when I died anyway. So I gave my son a watch, and now there are two kids at school, him and another guy in his class, and they've got old school, nice analog watches, which is kind of funny. And he's a big fan of having a real watch, one without a battery to be changed. And his is the one where the more you move, it winds itself. I like my Apple Watch Ultra. You know, the thing that I like about my watch is the silent alarm. My watch taps me awake in the morning, and there's no dinging. I turn mute on everything because I get so many messages. I mean, it would drive you insane if you had the amount of messages that I get from just people on Instagram, people on Twitter, people text messaging, emails, things like that. Constantly ding, 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 ding all the time. So I just keep it all turned off, minimize the notifications. But the silent alarm, it has this thing inside of it, and it can tap. And it wakes me up every morning by tapping on my wrist. So I don't wake anybody up in the house. Whenever I have an alarm go off, no one knows, just me, because I can feel my wrist tapping. And it's the most useful feature on the watch. It genuinely is a very useful feature, particularly when I don't want to wake my wife up because I get in trouble if the alarm goes off and she's still sleeping. It just taps me. When I was doing 4 a.m. Wake-up calls to do 5 a.m. early morning Fox and Friends hits, it came in very, very useful. I rarely do those anymore, thankfully. I'm not a morning person, y'all. I would rather stay up all night long than get up early in the morning. I hate mornings. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America. You know, we're going to find out what the Fed does with interest rates. Some banks are saying they hope for a 50 basis point or 0.5% interest rate cut. I have no idea. What I do know is that the Feds are trying to get you to spend your money without using cash because they want to be able to control your purchases. If there's a secret war on cash going on, Swiss America is warning you about it. You get their free report about the secret war on cash. It is completely free. You call or text 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency as well. So you call or text them 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can just text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646, or go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. That's SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Let Swiss America help you. They can give you their report completely free. You can see what they mean by the secret war on cash. You can let them help you protect your hard-earned finances today. 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com/Eric. Swiss America can help you. Their report's completely free. Message and data rates may apply. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be very, very happy to have you. I want to play a clip from CNN, Aaron Burnett show. The mayor of Evanston, Indiana, I think it is, talking to Aaron Burnett and in Evanston, Illinois, about immigration and protecting members of his community.
Publicly, that ICE operations are imminent. And I should also state that you are running for Congress as a Democrat, as you and I sit here speaking. But, Mayor, you say this is imminent. So what else do you know? Or are you also basically in the dark? I mean, what do you know about what's about to happen over the next few hours and days?
Well, first of all, I am absolutely in the dark. The Trump administration wants to keep us guessing, wants to use our uncertainty to keep us afraid. But the reason that we communicated with our residents this morning is that I got information from a senior state official last night indicating that they had good intel, that they thought it was likely that ICE would be coming to Evanston today and in the coming days. And we just felt that we had a responsibility to let our residents know so they could work to protect themselves. We've been doing everything we can to protect our residents from before Donald Trump took office, passing strong sanctuary laws to make sure our police are not cooperating with federal civil immigration enforcement, protecting our data, switching off our license plate cameras when we learned that that data was being shared. But we also need to make sure our residents know as much as possible so they can take the steps they need to protect themselves.
Is that not wild to you that this mayor is bending over backwards to protect our residents, not our voters, not our citizens, not our real taxpayers, but our residents, which she means the illegal immigrants as well, even switching off license plate readers so that illegal aliens can hire? The entirety of the progressive worldview is upside down from sanity. That gets me back to this clip from Van Jones, who I want to say he's going after Charlie Kirk, who made remarks that some find incendiary. And I suspect that at the times, and listen, y'all don't know Van Jones, and I do, and I like him. I find him to be a very caring person, even as I disagree with him on a lot of things. I do think his heart tends to be in the right place, and I suspect he did not know that this man on this bus or on this light rail train actually was caught afterwards talking about what he did to that white girl. He got that white girl. And it makes it very much sound like the attack was motivated by this being a white girl who sat down in front of him, the Ukrainian refugee. Listen to this, though, because there's a larger point here.
Let me just say a couple of things. One is, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare if you're in any public space, subway, whatever, that something bad is going to happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail? and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out. It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who are hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
To defend Charlie Kirk, actually, it was the murderer who mentioned the woman's race first, immediately after killing her. It was the murderer who did, and I do suspect Van didn't know that at the time because that came out after that clip. But I will say again that, as I said yesterday, that were it a white man murdering a black woman on that light rail, we would be having multi-day national conversations about race on CNN and everywhere else in the media. Why not the George Floyd thing? Well, I hate to say this, but George Floyd wasn't a good guy. That's why we didn't get all this world-changing thing with the George Floyd Act and everything else. George Floyd wasn't actually a good guy. He shouldn't have been killed. The knee should not have been on his neck for as long as it was, but George Floyd wasn't a good guy. George Floyd was actually not a good guy. And there is a lot of evidence that the fentanyl in his system, the drugs in his system, played a role in his death. Here's the problem. Van says we don't know how to deal with people suffering like this crazy homeless murderer was. He's not wrong, just so you understand. He's not wrong when it comes to progressive public policy, because I know how to deal with people who are suffering like that. You put them in mental institutions and you medicate them and you work on getting them better. But progressive public policy has decided to cede our public spaces to the homeless insane. And that's a failure of progressives. And when you point it out, you're shouted as a racist. CNN this morning, I came on when CNN hasn't been covering the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, because pretty nonstop they've been covering the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, trying to tie it to Donald Trump. CNN actually had a remarkable story on Wolf Blitzer's show earlier about how young black men are returning to traditional churches. Young black men are returning to traditional churches. Why? Because of the structure and stability of traditional religion. Now, I'm not diving deep into theology here, so don't tune me out for those of you who think I get too Jesus-y sometimes. This is just a basic point. There's something called ecclesiology. Ecclesiology is a lot to do with the structure of a church, and part of that is the liturgy of the church. When you go to a church, in many churches, not the non-denominational strip mall church necessarily, but you go to a church like I'm in the PCA, the Presbyterian Church in America, or most famously, you go to a Catholic or Greek Orthodox church, there is a defined order of worship where certain things are going to happen at every church. In my church, I go to what is more high church than low church. I don't wear a suit when I go to church. I don't wear a suit when I go to church because there are a lot of people at our church. It's kind of a high church. It's one of the oldest buildings in town. And I don't want people to feel uncomfortable if they come to church and they don't have a suit. And so I consciously, I had to have this talk with my son who was asking why I don't wear a suit to church. I don't wear a suit to church because I know that I'm well known in my community. And if Eric Erickson is comfortable in his church not wearing a suit, then I should be comfortable at his church too, not having to wear a suit. And so I do it by design. I don't want people to feel like you got to come dressed to the nines to come to church. I'd rather you come to church than to say, I can't go. My suit's not pressed. So I'm not going to wear a suit. So you can feel comfortable not wearing a suit. But when you come, there's an order of worship, and there's going to be a welcome, and there's going to be an opening psalm, and there's going to be an opening hymn. And then there's going to be a time of private, quiet reflection, and the preacher's going to say something about sin, and there's going to be some speaking back and reading back, and oral reading of Scripture, and a part of the catechism you will read responsively, and then there will be a corporate prayer, and then there will be a time time of giving, and there will be a choir anthem, and the kids will be dismissed to children's church, and then there will be another hymn, and then the preacher will preach, and then there's a benediction, and it follows the same order of worship every time. And young black men are going to organize churches like that because they want the structure. And you know why they want the structure? They want the structure because it's been missing from their lives. They want the attachment because it's been missing from their lives. The policies of white progressives going back to the Johnson administration have destroyed the black community. And you know, if you point that out as a white person, the white progressives scream that you're a racist, because they would rather scream racism than deal with accountability for the problems that they have caused in the black community, where the black community has the highest rates of divorce, the highest rates of births out of wedlock, the highest rates of incarceration, and on and on and on it goes. The data is just overwhelmingly not good for the black community. And the black politicians and the white progressives who are on the Democratic Party side scream that you're a racist when you point it out. It's like all the gun violence in Chicago. You have all the gun violence in Chicago, and the white people say, why can't we do something about it? And the white politicians say, that's a conversation for their community. Is it not your community too? You don't want the gangbangers in your society, and yet no, it's their community. And the way they've effectively tried to deal with the problem is to pretend the problem doesn't exist. Zoran Mamdani, who is running for mayor of New York City, you know how he's decided to get rid of gang violence in New York? Listen to this.
Let me ask you about a bunch of different policies just to kind of get your thinking out there. If city council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers on the basis of whether they go out late, photos they put on social media, so much of the facts of life of being a young New Yorker. And yet it then becomes a mark of suspicion. And it is a concern of mine that we do not live up to, of all people, Eric Adams's words in 2021, who said that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
Okay.
Right. That's his escapism. He's making a claim that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. I've seen this game played before in my own city, where before I was on city council in my city, we had a mayor who got rid of our gang database and had the gang task force that investigated gangs. And you know what he did? When he got rid of the gang database and the gang task force that investigated the gangs, he declared there was no gang problem anymore in the city. There were, after all, no more gang arrests. There were, after all, no more people going into the gang database. Therefore, they solved the problem of gangs in the city. That's progressive democratic thinking, where they want to wipe all this stuff away. Why are young black men joining gangs? Because they're looking for father figures. They don't have any in their communities. But by God, you can't talk about that, because that's racism to talk about that. The left has decided to scream racism to avoid having to talk about any problem, including a crazy homeless man left to wander the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, murdering a girl in part in his own words because she was white, and then screaming at people like Charlie Kirk, myself, and others for daring to say, yes, the guy killed her because she was white. He said so. And if it was reversed, if a white man murdered a black woman on that train, there would be national conversations about it. You don't believe me? Look at Daniel Penny killing the black guy on the subway in New York City. They arrested and tried Daniel Penny, who was protecting the people on the subway, and somehow the press and the Democrats made him the bad guy for being brave enough to stand up to protect other people. He was vilified by not just the Democrats, not just progressives, but the press itself vilified the young man for doing a good thing, protecting people from a homeless man. And one of the things that progressives said was, we are expect to get harassed by homeless people on the New York subway. progressives have given up trying to fix the problems. Now they say, like Van Jones does, God bless it, we just don't know what to do. No, we know what to do. You institutionalize them. You bring back the mental institutions and you put them there with state funding. You medicate them. You give them the help they need and maybe get them in a position to go back and rejoin society. Instead, the left said, you know what? We should mainstream these people into society. We should put them in halfway houses in normal neighborhoods where they can roam free, poop in people's backyards, and commit murders and crimes instead of forcing them into medications that will solve their problems. We have decided it was compassionate to not help them because it's cruel to actually force them to take the medications that get them in their right mind. That's the perversion of progressivism in society, where doing the right thing is bad and racist and not doing anything at all and causing the rest of society to have to deal with the problem. That's just compassion in action. We have ceded society to the criminal and the insane element and decided it's the cost of civilization where it shouldn't be. And when Donald Trump and the Republicans try to fix it, they scream racism. There's nothing racist about it. You know what's racist? A young white woman from Ukraine sitting down on a light rail system and the black man behind her deciding because she's a white girl who sat down in front of him, he's going to murder her. And that, my friends, again, his words, not mine, his words. I can't actually say the word he used because you can't say it on radio. But that's what that guy did. And we're supposed to pretend that race wasn't involved. We're supposed to pretend this guy was just mentally ill. No, we should recognize he should have been committed somewhere instead of constantly let out to be a threat to other people. The law-abiding citizens of this nation should not have to live in fear of situations like this. We have institutions we can put them in. We should put them there. We should reopen the institutions, close down. Hello, welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Inflation basically wiped out all wage gains last year. This is new data that has come out from the Census Bureau today. I want you to think about this. It goes back to the jobs numbers. Americans were telling reporters, anyone who would listen, they didn't feel good about the economy. And the reporters and the Democrats were telling everyone last year that actually the economy was really good. You were just being talked out of believing it was good because of Donald Trump. Now the Census Bureau comes out today with its recap of inflation data from the prior year. And not only did the nation actually not gain as many jobs as claimed, in fact, 911,000 jobs less than we thought. But now it turns out inflation actually wiped out wage growth last year, except for the highest income earning Americans. That's actually really bad. So essentially no one got ahead last year except the really wealthy. And yet the media wanted to tell us it was all well and good. It wasn't. And the American people knew it was the reporters who did not. I'll have more on this in the 4 Things to Know This Afternoon podcast that you can subscribe to. Right now, I need to tell you about Vision Computers. If you go to visioncomputers.com or call them at 404-COMPUTE, they can build you a computer. They can save you money in the process of building you that computer. They can upgrade your existing computer, and you get their world-class customer service where they give you a special phone number. If you ever have a question or a problem, you can call the phone number, and in 15 seconds or less, someone answers and you talk to a real human being. You never have to do the IT ticket. You just call and talk to a real human being. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. If you've got an in-house IT person, God bless you. If you can't afford to have someone on staff and you're using a managed IT system, you should call Vision wherever you are nationwide, from Hawaii to Maine, from Alaska to Florida. Call Vision at 404-COMPUTE. They might be able to save you some money. And your employees will get an actual human being to talk to who will pick up the phone in 15 seconds or less instead of having a ticket system that you got to file and hope somebody calls you back. So you have more uptime, less downtime. Your employees stay more productive. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Tell them Eric sent you. You can save even more money, and they can keep you online. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com.